This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUReview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
4 turtles, mutated beyond recognition. For 15 years, the brothers hid in the sewers, training in the ancient ways of the ninja.
You cannot simply walk amongst the humans.
But we can certainly fly! Woohoo!
Now the teenagers finally surface, but the welcoming committee isn't quite what they expected.
Prepare to battle, costume fools.
We're not wearing costumes.
Yeah! Don't miss the world premiere of the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles!
Welcome, everybody, to episode 349 of the DCAU Review. I'm one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend and brother, Liam. Liam, it's that time of year again where the showers come to bring the flowers for the next month on the calendar, I guess, as the saying goes. But before we get into all the rainy season and all of that, we have the unofficial pranksters non-holiday holiday to celebrate, and that is, of course, April Fools Day. And you and I, several years ago, decided upon a very unique way of celebrating April Fool's Day via the DCAU Review. And it's become one of my favorite episodes of the year, actually, because we get to venture outside of the walls, not only of the DCAU, not only outside the walls of the DC universe, but then way out there and really go exploring out just anywhere it seems into animation. And this year is absolutely no different.
Absolutely. So yeah, they've all been different Marvel cartoons, which are a lot of fun to revisit. We have some certainly have some nostalgia for those series as well, but we've gotten kind of out of the traditional superhero mold entirely this year, as we're looking at the 2003 pilot episode to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the animated series. And I think depending on your age range, this might not be the TMNT show that's the most iconic to you. Mm-hmm. But I think there's for vintage such as ourselves, I think this is our Ninja Turtles. Like, this is kind of the sweet spot that I think kind of you could credit this and the accompanying toys and everything that spilled out of this is kind of keeping the Ninja Turtles alive, because they weren't really doing, like, the movies had kind of come and gone, and they didn't really do reruns of the old show, which I think was a rights thing for a long time. Mm-hmm. So it's like, this, without this, I don't know that we would still be getting, like, there's a new Ninja Turtles thing almost every 3 years now, just like any of the other big franchises. So I feel like this is the bridge that the later animated series and the more recent animated and semi live action films are all kind of built upon, is this show for kind of keeping the torch burning in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, this really bridges the gap. There was, I think, maybe a single season or 2 seasons of a show that Saban did in 97, 98. But it's, from my understanding, as far as turtle fandom is concerned, it's somewhat forgettable. As you mentioned, there's kind of 2 camps. There's the people that grew up on the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon from around the time those movies came out, that certainly lent to years and years of action figures and tie-ins and other stuff like that. But as you mentioned, I wouldn't say it was a dead brand, but largely speaking, it was not in the public zeitgeist of, superheroes and these things until it was brought back, after probably a 5 or 6 year absence of being on television. And this series, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003, as the TMNT fandom refers to it, is really a huge success story. Ended up going on to have more than 155 episodes, I believe, and aired from 2003 to 2009. So you have a really strong case to be made that this is the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, especially because when you look at some of what the development and reading up on what went into this story, the co-creators of the characters that were very much involved with the actual creation and production of this show, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, they really wanted to return the Ninja Turtles back to the comic book roots, which is where these characters originated from prior to their more well-known appearances in those live-action movies of the 80s and the cartoon that followed. So this definitely has more of that darker, more serious tone, I would say. And I know that in reading up on kind of what the creators of the series had in mind, they really liked them being these turtles that were raised to be assassins, which is kind of what their original roots are. And it's hard to tell those stories. Or you would think it would be hard to tell those stories in a cartoon for Saturday morning kids cartoons that had to be rated TVY7 here in the United States.
Right.
But it seems like they at least had some success there long enough to keep this around for 7 seasons or so.
Yeah, and we'll get into it as we talk about it. I think they do a pretty good job. I mean, I think the original 80s cartoon, they weren't even allowed to draw their weapons famously. So and again, there's ways you can hide that. We'll see in this episode. You have them fight robots and other weird little creatures, or you just see the swords clash and then you see flashes of light. We've talked about that for years on Batman the Animated Series and some of the other shows that had sort of harsher censorship notes where physical violence was kind of not allowed. So you cut right before you see the sword hit something, and then you see like a blue streak or something across the screen to intimate that it sliced through something. So yeah, you definitely have to be clever with it. You have to be creative artistically with it. And this is interesting. I think it's also funny, I think, looking at it, because Ninja Turtles as a concept was making fun of Frank Miller.
Right.
Specifically Daredevil mostly. Like the foot is because the ninja group in Marvel is the hand, and their origin, the turtles getting spilled with the mutagen is basically what happens to Matt Murdock, is some chemical spill on him and he becomes a superhero, and the sort of very ultra gritty, ultra serious style of a certain era of comics, specifically Frank Miller's comics of a certain era. And so it's funny to see the ebb and flow of it. It was something sort of parodying very serious comics, and then, like I said, because of the 80s show and then the live action movies, it kind of became very silly and over the top and very kid friendly. And then this series is like, what if we kind of married that together, where it's still very kid friendly, still action, it's still colorful, but we don't we don't wink at the camera so much, and in some cases literally, because I think there was fourth wall breaking on the 80s show. So it's like there's still plenty of humor, there's still plenty of colorful characters and wacky stuff going on, but we can also tell a story that's you can make it more of an adventure show, more of a and play it straight and let the comedic moments stick to speak for themselves without you having to really hit the audience over the head with it. So that, I think this show does a really interesting job of taking original concepts and mixing in and kind of forging its own path by taking it back to a little bit more of a self-serious route. That's what we're going to talk about with today's pilot episode of the series, Things Change.
That is right, Liam, and we will get to, of course, we have an official IMDb synopsis for this episode, as is the case with every episode that we cover here on the DCAU Review, so we will get that in just a moment. But before we do, we will remind you, if you'd like to support the podcast, we have a new way of supporting us. You can head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review. That's buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review. If you want to, you can become a supporter of the podcast that way. Check out that website and you will see not only one-time options to support the podcast. Hey, you're feeling like you love this April Fool's Day tradition and you just want to buy us a little coffee to say thanks. Hey, you have that option there. But you can also become a recurring monthly supporter of the podcast right there as well. And we have 3 different tiers for you. If you want to support the podcast at various different levels that all come with some really neat perks, including each and every one of them come with a special thank you and shout out. So this week we'd like to give a special shout out to our newest supporter, Jonas, which great name, by the way, Jonas, my favorite Weezer song. My name is Jonas. Great tune. But Jonas, thanks for becoming our latest supporter on the podcast. Make sure you reach out to us via our Twitter DMs or Instagram DMs with your address so we can send you that little thank you gift for being a supporter of the pod. And if you'd like to join Jonas as well as our other monthly supporters, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review. And if you join our top tier supporters, you have the opportunity to ask a question about the episode that we'll be reviewing the following week, each and every week. But head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review and support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So this is the synopsis for Things Change, which was written by Michael Ryan, directed by Chuck Patton, with music. So this is a note to make. So the credits for this show, they seem to not have episode specific credits. So there's like 14 composers
Nice.
credited on this episode. Yes, but I will mention the music supervisors are John Siegler and Jonathan Lateef, and then I will mention that the theme song, which we will certainly be talking about later, by Norman J. Grossfield and Russell Velazquez. So, and then of course animation by Dong Wu, who we're very familiar with.
There you go.
So, with all that out of the way, that IMDb synopsis reads as such. In the midst of an intense training session with Master Splinter, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are attacked by Mouser robots. With their lair destroyed, the Turtles must search for their master and find a new home.
Yeah, that's a great little synopsis there.
Agreed.
So that'll bring us to our synopsis. We could just leave it at that, but we'll, of course, bring our own here. But kicking things off here, we have what's interesting. We have a little bit of a cliffhanger intro to the episode before we get to our theme song. And we are introed to our turtles, which are, we have a voiceover introduction that is done by, I believe it's Michelangelo, or not Michelangelo. I'm sorry. It's, I'm going to do this like 4 or 5 times here. This is the voiceover has to be Leonardo, right? I think it's Leonardo.
Yes.
Introduces himself. Yes. So Leonardo introduces himself over and does a voiceover kind of describing what we see. We see our 4 turtle heroes in a very dark alley, backed up against the wall, going up against a group of gangsters that call themselves the Purple Dragons, and they seem to be calling out, thinking that these individuals are wearing costumes, but regardless of wearing these silly costumes, they are not going to go down without a fight. They're going to beat them to a pulp. They're going to pulverize them. They're going to do all this stuff.
My name is Leonardo, and right now my brothers and I are in a mess of trouble. Our backs are up against the wall in some trash-strewn alley, cornered by the toughest street gang on the east side.
Look at the freaks! What's with the dweeby costume? This ain't Halloween.
You're going down, freaks!
Yeah!
Nobody messes with the Purple Dragons, especially wearing stupid turtle costumes. He's wrong. We're not wearing costumes.
But as we come back from our opening credits, we do find ourselves at the aforementioned little quiet moment here as we see Master Splinter, who is a anthropomorphic rat, who is sitting there leading some meditation with his turtles. That's the one thing I had a gripe with as far as that synopsis is concerned. It's not physically intense. At least at the beginning, it's more of a emotionally intense bit. But he's challenging them to sneak up and put the candle wick, or put the candle that he has lit, out without being noticed. And one by one, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello do their best to put out the flame of the candle, all unsuccessfully, as they're all a bit made a fool of by Master Splinter. And that leaves Leonardo, who I don't think we talked about this. One of the things I guess we can talk about in the dynamics of the show is they do their best to kind of differentiate the personalities of each of these turtles. Each of them, as you watch the show, if you went through the whole series, you would see obviously Michelangelo is the comic relief. We have Donatello is like the nerdy tech guy. Raphael is like the hothead that is essentially wants to be the leader of the turtles, or believes he's the leader of the turtles. And then you have Leonardo, who is really the leader of the turtles, and honestly the best of them all, essentially. So that's very, very early on established here. As we said, all three of the other turtles were unsuccessful in defeating Master Splinter's challenge. But then at the very end here, we see Leonardo, who is, I guess he took some lessons from Batman, because he is hiding in the shadows and is able to sneak out with his scimitar and slice the candle in half, snatching the flame from Master Splinter without him noticing, or without him being able to stop him, at least. Thus successfully completing the challenge and impressing Master Splinter, much to Raphael and the others' chiding and disappointment, as they say that he's a teacher's pet and he's a show-off. But as we see this continue, our heroes there go into a bit less physically strenuous and more mental strain as they go into more meditation, as Master Splinter is challenging them that they must live underground. They must not be seen by the above ground. They must be like shadows. They cannot interact. He's doing his best to hide his team of turtles from the above world and those that are above ground. But just as he's doing that, this world also, you got to have Nuns and Dynamite moments.
My sons, if you are to become true ninja, you must work harder. Your path in life will not be an easy one. The outside world will not be a friendly place for you. You four are different in ways the surface dwellers would never understand. To survive, you must master these skills I teach you. Ninjutsu powers of stealth and secrecy. You must become Kage, shadow warriors, and you must never be discovered by the outside world.
Huh?
Huh? What is that noise?
Whoa! Earthquake! In New York? Possible, but not likely. What are those things? New York City cockroaches?
Whatever they are, they picked the wrong party to crash.
So, of course, in the middle of this very quiet moment, the entire room begins to shake here as we see their underground sewer layer begins to crumble. And then, as we mentioned in our synopsis, these little tiny mouser robots, as they're called, with these really unique looking chomping faces that look like some elaborate trap on legs, essentially, begin breaking through the ground, destroying the different pikes and posts that are holding up the walls around them. And our turtles and Master Splinter all go into action, trying to fight off these foes. There is some action that occurs. We see each of our turtles use their very unique weapons, which we can talk about in the animation and visuals as well. And Master Splinter himself, with his stick, is also fending off his own set of robotic foes. And as it just appears that they have defeated them, Master Splinter is sectioned off in one area against several different robots, and just as the other turtles appear to have defeated all of their bots, the roof begins to cave in, separating our turtles from Master Splinter, leading them to be very upset and certainly frightened that Master Splinter may have been killed by this cave-in. Then we get to see Donatello pulling out the shell phone, which, yes, we love it.
Donatello, any way to... What are you doing? Shell Cell, I'm calling Master Splinter. I hope...
Which button do you press to enter this thing? Hello?
Master Splinter, are you all right?
Hello?
Master Splinter...
Stupid device.
You don't have to press any buttons. You already answered it.
Leonardo, whatever those mechanical menaces are, they have managed to eat through the support structure of our hull. We must leave right away. Meet me at the old drainage junction near South Point.
If we take the south conduit, it'll intersect with the old drainage tunnel. We'll meet you there, Sensei. What'd he say? What'd he say? Did he mention me?
So this sends our turtles out through the sewers, and they go to the next route, which would lead them around to where Master Splinter is believed to be. But that way is also blocked, meaning that they only have one way out, and that is up to the surface level. And despite several of the turtles decrying the decision to do so, Raphael and Leonardo lead them up to the surface. And it is Raphael leading the way as he breaks the surface there and begins sneaking out and around. He makes his way over to another accompanying alley and attempts to use that sewer grate to get back down to the sewers and hopefully locate Master Splinter. But before he can get there, a giant armored truck pulls up and parks itself directly over the sewer grate that he was attempting to go down and on, not just over, but on the sewer grate, preventing him from being able to do that. So as he's checking out the mysterious armored car, the rest of the turtles hang back at the original entrance where they were, still keeping their eyes on Raph, but encouraging him to hurry up and try and get down to meet Master Splinter. But just as he is checking out the truck and trying to figure out what's going on, we see the gang, the Purple Dragon gang that we saw at the beginning of the episode. They are making their way out of this building and back into the truck. They've talking about their ill-gotten gains as they've robbed the place. They have bags of money, and they hurl the money into the back of the vehicle. But as we see inside, it appears that Raphael, who jumped in an attempt to hide, is no longer there until we cut and see him hanging from the ceiling. So now Raphael is locked inside the back of the truck. The truck pulls away, and the rest of our turtles have to find a way to meet Raph and get him out of the back of the truck without getting discovered by the surface dwellers here. So that's where we pick things up with our turtles traversing across the city, trying to cut the truck off where they can. Not just any city, by the way. We establish it is New York City, where the turtles are. So they're traversing across the rooftops, and they make it to where the final destination for the truck is. And wouldn't you know it, of course, one of the gang members suggests that they leave a lookout for their truck just to make sure that nobody steals their stolen money, which then leads to our first turtle fight of the day.
Yes, that's right. As Raph is very frustrated being stuck inside the van, being taunted by Michelangelo as Donatello tries to unlock the special number pad lock, I guess, on this thing. He's doing some hacking. He's the tech guy. So Donnie's working on that while Michelangelo continues to taunt him. And as the doors spring open, Raph can't quite contain his hot-headed nature and tackles Michelangelo, and as they sort of roughhouse around, that alerts the rest of this gang, which we, as mentioned in the opening scene, are known as the Purple Dragons, and we get a bunch of colorfully dressed gang members who are threatening the turtles, and turtles make pretty quick work of them, quite frankly. Just knocking them around, piling their bodies up, their unconscious bodies up, and seemingly all is right in the world. But as they look up into the sky, it's not a bird or a plane; it's a whole bunch of ninjas, and these ones are a little bit more prepared to fight than the rank and file street gangs of New York, apparently. And
let's get out of here! I'm with you!
Give me some green! Well, that was easier than expected.
I hope there are more of those guys. I'm just getting warmed up.
Well, looks like you got your wish, Raffy boy. Are those guys ninjas? Well, they're certainly ninja-esque. Be ready for anything. I am so gonna enjoy this.
We, at this point, I think, cut back to Splinter, who is dealing with more mousers as he continues to kind of fight for his life by himself there, knocking the mousers out and destroying them all finally. But they're holding their own, but there's just so many of these mysterious black-clad ninjas that they're unable to really handle it. They're getting overwhelmed. They're getting knocked around, and finally Donatello is able to hotwire the van, and they all make a quick getaway, getting out of the way of all of these crazy ninjas who refuse to let up on them. So they go speeding through the streets of New York because there's a bit more banter, and they go smashing right through like sewer gates. They're not being particularly subtle. I mean, I guess at this point you're just trying to get away, but they're slamming through things. They're speeding through New York City. I guess it's late at night, so there's not a lot of traffic, but I don't know if there's ever not a lot of traffic in New York, but for the purposes of this, there is, as Donnie goes speeding through the streets with the other turtles, smashes through a giant gate that leads them down into the sewer tunnels. Thankfully, the sewer tunnels are all giant van size for them to continue their escape, and they arrive to where I guess Splinter's signal was coming from, and we see that he is recovered and is simply meditating, waiting for them. And he informs them that there's actually it's actually good news, is that even though their old home was destroyed by the Mousers, all is not lost, as it's been a bit fortuitous as they find this new, very large facility underground, and they're going to make their new home just as soon as the turtles clean it all up, as they all grow, because they're still teenagers at the end of the day, and no teenager wants to clean their room. So that's where we leave our turtles. That seems to be the end, but wait, there's a little bit of an epilogue. It's not a Marvel post-credit scene because it's before the credits, but it's a little epilogue and a little a taste of what's to come if you continue on watching this show for the rest of the season, as we see the leader of the Purple Dragons, John, talking to a boss man dressed in sort of ceremonial robes, and explaining that that he is that they lost all of the money. Oh, I should mention that the turtles also, as they were speeding through New York, stopped to drop off all of the stolen cash with a couple of police officers, and then they speed off to the sewers. So we cut to John, the Purple Dragon leader, trying to explain that they lost all of the money, but it's not their fault because they were attacked by some sort of karate frogs, I believe, which is a very funny, because that's not any more or less ridiculous than what the actual name is, which I think is part of the fun of that.
100%.
Sir, my men, we lost the armored car with the money, but we were attacked.
by some sort of karate frog creatures or something. They took us by surprise. It wasn't my fault.
Enough.
I promise, sir, I won't fail you again.
I know. You won't fail me again. Ever.
No, sir, please.
The boss stands up with a sinister look on his face and says, "I know you won't." And then we sort of fade back. The camera pulls out. The doors of this dojo close. We see that they're emblazoned with the same logo that all of the ninjas had on their chest. And then we hear a blood-curdling scream from old John, as we're left to maybe wonder what exactly happened to him. And we hear the mysterious big boss laugh maniacally as we fade to black here. So the Turtles found a new house. They've got some robots to contend with, and there's this mysterious big ultimate bad guy out there who is not afraid to get his hands dirty. So we've set up a pretty interesting array of issues for our heroes to deal with as we end this here pilot episode.
Yeah, that's right, Liam. And by the way, I didn't mention it at the time, but this episode originally aired February the 8th, 2003 on the Fox Kids Network. And one of the interesting things I found out in the production of this show was, so 4Kids Entertainment was responsible for this, the production and everything that had to do with this show. And this is the first like in-house production, because the rest of the stuff that they did was all, I think, editing and translating Eastern anime in particular into for Western television. So this is like their first foray into this area and doing an in-house cartoon of their own, instead of just editing or redubbing existing animation. So as far as the episode is concerned, one of the things that we learned in doing our research here is that whole opening intro, where we have the introduction to the Turtles and their voiceover from Leonardo talking about the Purple Dragon Gang and all that. That is literally lifted from the very first Mirage Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic #1, panel for panel, voiceover included. I think the only thing different is the way that our turtles ended up looking, because it was in black and white in the original comic, and now our turtles are in full Technicolor. But I love that they really establish things here by going back to the roots of these characters. As we said, between the live action movies and the cartoons, they really leaned into the camp and the silliness and the goofiness of these characters. And this opening scene, which you take from, as you mentioned, while it was a bit of a parody of the Daredevil Frank Miller comics, it really establishes a darker tone to these characters right off the bat. It also is not bogged down by a whole bunch of, we have to establish what the lore of these characters are, which is always a bold thing to do, because I feel like so many creators feel like, well, we have to introduce who these characters are, because what if there's people that don't know who the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are? Or what if we don't know who people who don't know who Batman is, or what his origin is, or Superman, or the X-Men, or any of that? Like, we have to establish the lore. And it's like this cartoon is just like, nope, we're going to give you a brief synopsis with a voiceover from Leonardo that you don't hear any voiceover work, I don't think, for the rest of the episode, but you get this little bit here where it establishes, he tells you that they're in this alley, they're about to fight this gang, they're not wearing costumes, so kids at home know that these are actually anthropomorphic turtles that are ninjas. They're not men in turtle costumes. Maybe a little bit of a joke also, or a little bit of a meta joke about the turtles from the original, from the live action movies, like people in turtle costumes. These are actual turtles that are mutated, that have come to life, and that are ninjas, and that's all you need to know. And then the rest of the episode, I feel like they do a really good job. Again, like I said, you get the little bit at the beginning here where they're doing their training, and you kind of really differentiate who the leader of the gang is, even subtly through the way that they try and take on Master Splinter's challenge. You see the characteristics of who these characters are just through, like, Michelangelo is not sneaky at all. He's like the opposite of a ninja in that bit, and just too goofy, too clumsy. Raph is obviously, that fiery, like, hot-headed guy who's just coming at it with all this rage and anger. And then maybe Donatello is a little bit too much in his head about things. And then you have Leonardo established as like, okay, this is the guy who takes everything very serious, but not so serious that he is angry about everything like Raph is. So I feel like they do a pretty neat job of differentiating who these characters are, establishing who the characters are, who Master Splinter is, what their roles are within this team, and all without like, I'm Raphael, I'm the angry one. Like, not just coming out and using typical children's cartoon logic of exposition to explain what's going on here. You really establish it through who the characters are and how they act.
Yeah, I think they do that, and we'll talk more about it in visuals as well. But yeah, it's how they walk, how they move. Like they're all shown to be like competent at, as far as, everybody can do parkour, everybody can flip, everybody has their own weapons that they're proficient in. But yeah, there is that thing where you see kind of repeatedly Raphael's aggression gets in his way. Michelangelo not being able to take anything seriously gets in his way.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie maybe overanalyzing, less so I think Donatello and Leo in this episode, but we see
right
their, as the series goes on, certainly you see like what their strengths and weaknesses are. So yeah, there is a thing where you could make it very caricature-y, like
mm-hmm.
you said, and where it's just every scene, like you also do get like bits of, I think, of camaraderie with it, and that they're not always at each other's throats either. Like it would be really easy to have Raph just yelling at all of the other turtles all the time. And
right.
Like I said, and then this episode, obviously, when Michelangelo is pressing his buttons, it does he does lose it, but it's not necessarily always how he acts. But so yeah, they do a good job of establishing those archetypes without making it too schlocky or too cliche, I think.
No, I was actually pleasantly surprised by that, because I think we definitely saw this episode at some point in the original run, but I really didn't remember how they went about establishing whether we were going to see their actual, the actual mutagen transformation of these turtles into actual turtle beings. But yeah, you didn't need to do that, or at least the creators at this point didn't feel like they needed to do that. They introduced kind of a lot of different elements here. It does feel pretty jam-packed for a 22 minute episode or whatever it is. There is a lot of stuff that's introduced. But obviously there's still more that they had to introduce too. That's, there's no April O'Neil in this. There's none of some of the other supporting characters or supporting villains either. It's you establish this, the turtles go, they break the seal on the surface there. They get into a little bit of a fight here. You bring in the foot soldiers. You have a little bit of intrigue as to what this gang of ninjas is. They have a little battle. The turtles retreat. They get their new lair. There's an in-story reason for why they need a new lair. And then, you wrap things up with the introduction of the big bad that's ultimately going to be behind it all and be their fearsome foe for the majority of the run. So you do that all in 20 minutes, and like I said, it does. I think if there was anything else, it would probably feel a little bit too much.
Yeah,
but I think it's pretty balanced. The only thing that I feel like was left a little bit unanswered is what happens with. We get that little the side story with Splinter where he goes off exploring, and there's the kind of, I feel like there's a little bit of a cliffhanger. He's surrounded by the robots. He beats them, and then there's he walks into what I guess is the lair, because it's like shining and bright, and he kind of walks into it. But there was no explanation for why there were no other like Mouser robots that came after him, or why there's only 2 or 3 that were additionally after him at that point. I guess that's kind of nitpicking on the story itself, but it's fine. It's fine otherwise. I think maybe a little bit more fighting, as weird as that sounds. You get a little bit of the ninja action obviously in the middle of it, but I understand without just doing straight dialogue and exposition to explain who everybody is, you had to do a little bit more of the storytelling here before you get to fight sequences. So having that fight sequence kind of broken up in the middle, you have the fight between the purple dragons and the turtles, and then there's like a little break, and then the foot soldiers attack, and then we cut to Master Splinter, and then we cut back to them, and they're kind of overwhelmed at that point, and they drive off. So it doesn't feel like there's a ton of that action there in this episode. So that maybe suffers a little bit with having to do the more storytelling of the establishing of who all of these characters are, but it's understood, and I think preferred for me at least, over exposition or a full history lesson of how the Turtles came to be, so to speak.
No, I agree with that. I think it's good. Obviously, we have other supporting characters to introduce, important pieces of the Turtles. At like every version of the Turtles, you need those characters. But again, you don't, if you had tried to like force one or both of them into this first episode as well, or maybe expanded more on the Shredder or some of the other bad guys, I think it would have been just a little bit too much. So I think it's good for our first episode. Really, you get the meat and potatoes of the, like you said, the individual personalities of our 4 turtles, and then the sort of familial bond between them and Splinter, and you just kind of let it be more of the set dressing for the first piece. Like, all right, here's their new hideout. All right, here's the kind of some of the villains they're going to be fighting throughout the season, and and then kind of you could say go from there. So that's almost like it's almost entirely prologue for maybe what the big bits of the rest of the series are going to be, but starting out with more character focused stuff first episode, I think works to its advantage.
Yeah, that's why I ended up, for my plot here, I ended up going a 6 out of 10. I think it's a good starter. I think it's a good pilot episode. Like I said, as far as some of these shows that we've watched, where not just the April Fools shows, but some of the episodes that we've watched that really do lean into we have to establish the lore of who the character is prior to getting into some actual storytelling here. I appreciate the fact that they were able to kind of show you more who these people are rather than just telling you. And in a way that is, again, this is a cartoon that was aimed towards children first, but still trying to ground it in a little bit more serious and darker storytelling. So obviously, with our love of Batman the Animated Series and everything that goes along with the DCAU, those are some pretty strong examples of the best way to do that. And I don't think this is on that same level, but it is a good effort, I would say, in that same vein of establishing a decent story that introduces characters without dumbing it down to the point where an adult watching this, is just going to zone out and feel stupid for watching it.
Definitely agreed. Yeah, I just went 1 point higher on my score. I went 7 out of 10.
Nice. All right, so a good start to this episode here so far. And all right, Liam, we'll move on to our next category of the day, which is going to be visuals and animation. And as we said, our old friends at Dongwoo responsible for this episode. And we talked about the director being Chuck Patton, the story editor of Lloyd Goldfine, and he was also the supervising producer, writer Michael Ryan here for the episode. What stuck out to you as far as animation and visuals are concerned? Because obviously this is a cartoon that's starting here in 2003, meaning we're heading towards digital animation, I believe. I don't know how much of this or if any of this was hand drawn, but it's pretty sharp, and most of it is available on streaming services in pretty crystal clear HD. You might also be able to find this episode on YouTube if you look for it. But what are your thoughts on the way that the show looks, the character designs? What are your thoughts on the way that the characters move, the action, some of the sequence decisions, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think one of the things it feels like in from that first scene where they're trying to snuff out the wick, and then everything where they're sort of gallivanting over the roofs later when they're trying to catch up to the van. It's like they really zeroed in on like making them very graceful. Like even in that first scene where they're kind of stumbling over each other a little bit, they're still kind of moving very quickly and moving through the shadows. There's a lot of really cool like silhouette and shadow work, not unlike something you would see in in a Batman cartoon or something. So I loved that sequence there with I like it starts out with Donatello and Michelangelo kind of both falling down immediately basically, and then Raph takes him a little bit longer. Like he's got a little bit more strategy to him. He's a little bit more serious, but he's just too he goes in too fast and he gets tripped up, and then Leo coming out of the ceiling there. I think that's really great. And then so I really dug all the silhouette, and feels like a lot of the like the lead up to the fight is almost just as important. That feels very drawn from like Japanese and Hong Kong action movies of the 70s. Like you get the close-ups of their eyes, which of course you have all the different colored masks, and then the close-ups of the ninja and things like that to set it off. And so I think they put a lot of it to like the anticipation of the fight starting is almost as important and as the actual kicking and punching and slicing and everything. So I think they pull off some cool tricks that way. But yeah, I think the thing that really stuck out to me was just how kind of fluid the turtles look when they're moving. Like they're very, like it looks very effortless for them to when they're flipping around and jumping over rooftops and everything. So I think they did a great job of sort of getting that across here, of how just like acrobatic and effortless this is. And then also contrasting that at the end when they're getting kind of overwhelmed by the foot ninjas, of like, oh, this isn't, they're kind of used to just like dog walking. Like if they have to fight anybody, like if they have to fight anybody, they're pretty used to just being able to make quick work of everyone. So the idea that they're now in over their heads and you see them sort of slowly get overwhelmed is pretty fun as well. So I think they do some really cool stuff in those fight sequences as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The way that they kind of incorporate that the cinematic style of the panels that move in and out from it's more anime inspired, like when you would see a fight sequence in, I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that, or maybe even Pokemon, where you have one panel slide in at the top and it's maybe a close-up shot of their eyes and then you get another shot. I'm sure it's in most animes, I'm sure. Yeah. But I'm just drawing off of my limited anime knowledge there, so please forgive me. But the sequence where you have those varying different shots, which not only is very much Eastern animation inspired, but also brings in the idea that these are based on comic books. So you have like almost like individual comic book panels that kind of insert themselves there, where you see characters emote in those individual panels, or you see them move slightly, but it's really just kind of designed to create this tension that's building before you get to the actual fight sequence. And they do that a couple of different times. One specifically, I think, before the fight sequence with the purple dragons, and then I think maybe in the middle of the foot soldier battle too. There might be one other time, but I loved that. I was like, oh, if they do this throughout the entire series, like this is great. Like this is something that sets this apart from the other cartoons that are going on at that time as far as superhero cartoons, is this really unique way of kind of establishing, all right, we have two characters or multiple characters in this sequence. This is what they're all doing in this very same moment. It's like a multi-view almost, being able to see, what their emotions are, what their actions are at that time. There were a couple really neat sequences too, where our characters jump towards the screen, specifically the POV of you watching. It kicks off right at the beginning as we get that voiceover, and we talked about how that's ripped directly from that original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. But the foot kicking directly into your living room, essentially, as you're watching that before cutting to the opening credits is really neat. When the foot soldiers first appear, and we see, first of all these silhouettes that pop up that kind of look like, freaky birds or something like that are showing up there, and you only see their silhouettes and their eyes that are like glowing, and then they all begin to descend on the turtles. One jumps towards the screen and it goes right into its beady yellow eyes, and then that's the transition that they use to get you to the next scene. I thought that was really neat. There's really a couple of really unique kind of cliffhanger moments that they did too. Those are kind of, I don't know, I guess this is something we can talk about in animations and animation and visuals, because it kind of counts towards that. But every commercial break has a unique bumper where we get the song and one of our turtles, and then it goes back to the show. When we come back, it plays the theme and shows the logo. So I remember that being like a little bit of a, oh shoot, the show's back on. Like if you tuned out during commercials, or you went to the bathroom or went to get a bowl of cereal, like, oh shoot, I better get back in there. The show's back on. Really unique way of establishing, like, hey, pay back attention now, the commercials are done. Like something that was, I feel like, a staple of some that were built into cartoons, obviously, as far as like the network having bumpers, but this one was actually built into the cartoon itself, for the show itself, versus like, Kids WB back to Batman and Superman Adventures. This is like, it plays the theme, it shows one of our four turtles, and then you get back to action. So I really liked that as well. What are your thoughts on that opening sequence there? Because we get literally the sequence transitions from our four turtles going to attack the purple ninjas, jumping towards the screen, and then we flash to this gigantic CGI set of TMNT letters with lights flashing on it, and then we get a bunch of different animation sequences of our turtles, set to this song that we'll talk about in our next category. But it does a lot to, again, where the theme song does a lot, I feel like, to set the parameters and establish a lot of our characters for the show too.
Yeah, absolutely. They give you what you need to know. As far as the code of the martial arts and everything. But yeah, it's interesting because it is kind of I guess more along the lines of like the new Batman Adventures theme, or the Justice League Unlimited theme, in the sense that it has it's a lot of it are clips from episodes, but then there are a few original animation shots. I think the shot of, you see all four turtles go through, and then Casey Jones comes swaying in and swats at the camera with his hockey stick. I think that's a great shot. And April flying the helicopter, and Donatello catching a ride along the way is fun as well. So some of those original shots. Be remiss not to talk about the watch out for Shredder, and him holding the two knife whatever those gauntlet knives are called, and holding that against the screen there as he shouts. He I guess is talking about himself in the third person as he tells us to watch out for Shredder. But that whole sequence is a lot of fun. We do immediately get Raphael on his bike doing the famous, speaking of anime influence, the Akira slide, that gets homaged and parodied in quite a bit of stuff there. So we established some of the vehicles off the bat as well, which there was definitely toys of the shell cycle and the turtle van, whatever the van's called. I don't remember if the van had a name or not, but
It's called a party wagon in the toy line. I don't know if that's what they call it in the show or not.
Okay.
It's definitely the party wagon.
Right, for sure. So you get, shots of them in their various vehicles, and again you get some of the purple dragons and some of the other villains as well. So yeah, that's kind of your, again, a bit of a throwback with the lyrics assisting with all the visuals to be like, okay, if you've never seen the show before, here's all you really need to know about it. Like they hit all the big notes. Here's who they are. Here's what they're up to. Here are the bad guys. And now it's time to, as the song says, when all else fails, it's time to kick butt. And,
that's right.
It accompanies with visuals of them kicking said butt. So, yeah, great opening title sequence. Love it.
Yeah, and then of course with our individual turtles, we talked about, obviously they each get their own set of weapons, which, as you mentioned, the original cartoon, no weapons. It's very much that, Super Friends style of like, hey, this is a children's cartoon. We're not showing violence. I don't even know if I could tell you. I've probably seen a couple episodes of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, but could not even tell you. I imagine it's something very similar to how the bad guys are foiled in those other traditional 80s cartoons. But here, at least, even though it is disguised in the way that we are kind of used to as far as standards and practices are concerned, as you mentioned at the top, but we do have swords being drawn and sais being twirled and nunchucks being twirled and and Donatello's wooden stick also being twirled. So it does feel like our turtles, at least visually, are allowed to use their weapons. I don't know that we get to see them in action very well throughout this. Obviously they're incorporated a little bit in that original, and that little bit there with Master Splinter's challenge at the beginning, and then they are obviously visually present in the fight sequence between them and the purple dragons and the incredibly large amount of foot soldiers there. But yeah, it does feel like you could watch that episode and be like, yeah, I think they use their weapons, right? I'm pretty sure they used them in some form or fashion, which obviously two of our guys have knives/swords as their weapons. So that's going to be a difficult one to go up against unless you're I guess counteracting it with another knife or sai. But we also see throwing stars. The foot soldiers have their weaponry that they're hurling at the turtles, and so it does feel like we see a lot more weapons in action here than you would in a typical cartoon of this day and age. So I was kind of impressed that we got to see some of that stuff in action there.
Yeah, I think, like I said, they do a good job. Most of the weapons are being used defensively, at least as far as the knives and swords, like you said, the sais and the throwing stars. Anything sharp and pointy, I guess that's only really used for defense. But you do get to see them a little bit in action with which maybe is a good reason to have the Mousers in this episode, you get to see Leo and Raphael slice up a few
that's true
Mousers with their swords at the start of the episode. So you do get to see them use them for what they're supposed to be used for there. And then, yeah, for the rest of the episode, it's more lightsaber style. They're just kind of bouncing off of the other swords and weaponry. So, so that's kind of a fun, and it ends up being a lot of the actual impact is usually the big flying kick or whatever the big punch instead of the weaponry being used full force. But I think they do a good job of dressing it up, and like I said, even if they're using them defensively, it still feels like they're actively using them. Things, if you look, notice there's probably not a lot of shots. There's a couple shots I think of where like Leo runs up and the screen kind of goes black, and you just see these like slashes across the to sort of intimate that he's swinging the sword at something, but they don't show, I think, any humans actually getting a sword or anything that stabbed or sliced at them directly. So they do a good job of, like we said, in the same way that you would cut away, or you just hear the sound effect, or you'd see a flash of light before the impact on something on some of the old Batman shows or whatever that we've reviewed. So I think they do a good job of disguising that, even if it was a limitation that was placed on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, there's typically no standards of practice of what you can do to robots. So slicing and dicing, it was something that they were quite allowed to do. Now that you reminded me, some pretty interesting visuals of things being sliced directly in half and crushed and smashed and all that. So, it's they found their way around that. They learned some things from what can and cannot be showed there. So, I will just say there two things to say visually about our bad guys, our foot soldiers. They look pretty menacing, as I mentioned already. They're I think in the original cartoon, or especially in the action figures, I think they were purple. So these guys being more in the traditional black ninja hoods, and like I said, with the masks with the bright yellow eyes, really makes them menacing. There's a really neat sequence where one of them runs up the side of the wall and does some really cool parkour running along a wall. I don't know physically how it would necessarily work, but you don't need to think about it because it's a cartoon, and it's it's based on something that probably some sort of Eastern animation sequence, or Eastern one of those old Eastern movies. You could see that similar type of action there. So I did like that sequence. And then honestly, that final sequence where we get introduced to the mysterious person, the mysterious boss, everything about that sequence is really interesting to me, because I think you introduce this mysterious character who's sitting there and seemingly very peaceful. He's in that same sort of meditation pose that the turtles were in the beginning of the episode. We see him take a drink of tea or something like that, and then you see the leader John from the Purple Dragons walk in and suddenly realize, oh, maybe this guy isn't good. And then once you see his demeanor change when he learns that that they lost the money, they were defeated by these mysterious ninja frogs or whatever he calls them, and then the pan out and the face that kind of changes on him, he becomes more menacing in his face and in his eyes, and then we get this really neat pan out that goes outside of the dojo or wherever they're in. The doors close, as you mentioned, and we get the foot symbol on the door, and then we get an even further pan out of the city, and this gigantic skyscraper emblazoned with the same logo, and the lightning strike and the scream accompanying it. Just a really well done sequence there, again, to kind of leave you with a cliffhanger. I think we've talked about this before when we've done these one-offs or when we've started a new episode. It's like, does the pilot episode want to make you come back for more? And I think everything about that sequence really seals the deal of like, all right, I need to know who this person is. He's so evil that he probably just killed this guy or put him through extreme pain, one or the other. And what's this mysterious logo? What's his relation to this other gang that attacked? Like, just a really neat, well done sequence. So for all those reasons, everything that we established here today, and agreeing with the way that the turtles move, the action sequences, the fun that we get in the different sequences, I went with a pretty strong 8 out of 10 for my animation. I think everybody looks really great, accompanied with the opening credits. I think everything looks really, really neat, and doesn't do anything to hurt my interest in watching more of this show. What about you?
Yeah, I also gave it an 8 out of 10. I think everything's pretty fun. Like we said, it's not. I remember some of the episodes later in the season, once the Shredder's in all his glory, being like where this show's really cooking with gas as far as the fight scenes and the visuals. But I think there's a lot of stuff to love, and like I said again, just establishing kind of the style of the show from right off the bat. And shout out to Adrian Barrios, who's the lead character designer on the show, because I think everybody looks pretty cool. I like this Splinter. I think I've never really enjoyed looking at Splinter in any other version of the Turtles, but I love this. I like this version of Splinter where he's got like shaggier fur that kind of almost becomes the Fu Manchu, but it's not literally a Fu Manchu. I like his look, and I like that he's a little bit spry. Like he's definitely older than the rest of the Turtles, but he's still got a lot in the tank. So I like this version of Splinter a lot too.
There you go. He can handle himself quite well, as we can see, especially up against some of those robots.
Mhm.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be music. And as we talked about at the beginning, hard to pinpoint a single person responsible for the music for this episode, but thoughts on music as far as everything is considered. I guess we can talk about the show itself, and then we can talk about the theme song, because I feel like that's the main event. But what are your thoughts, music-wise, for how they handle it for the show, the different pieces, the style? Everything kind of goes into that for this particular episode.
Yeah, I guess we could save the theme song for last, because that's probably the most notes I have.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the actual music throughout the show, there is a lot of it. There's almost constantly music playing in the background, whether it's a sting to kind of punctuate the scene, or just sort of incidental music that's playing behind the dialogue and the fight scenes. I do think they do a pretty good job of switching it up. Everyone gets like a little. Obviously, the Turtles have their theme that plays a lot in the episode. Splinter kind of has his own. He has like a flute that kind of follows him around. It's like more like the wizened old, Japanese master music that follows him around, which is good. And the Mousers have like a little like boss, like video game boss battle music that plays whenever they pop up, which I think is pretty neat. And then there's kind of some good like esoteric, like Mission Impossible style, like sneaking music during some of the stealth stuff that they're doing when they're all in the shadows as well. So they do a good job. There's a lot of, and then we'll just, when we get up into the city and the action's really revving up, you just pull out that electric guitar and start shredding. So they kind of jump around a lot of different genres, depending on what's happening on screen, and then which characters we're kind of currently focused on.
Yeah, that was the thing that I noticed. I also noted lots of music. I think I tried to go back, and I may have missed one scene, but I think there is only one single sequence where there is no music, and that's after the cave-in happens, and they're trying to reach Splinter on the shell phone. It's probably a 2-minute sequence, so you're talking about 20 minutes of animation that just has lots of music behind it. And obviously we talked about that constantly, and how different animation kind of handled music over the years, and why a lot of times Batman the Animated Series and the subsequent DCAU episodes set themselves apart with that, by not just being wall-to-wall music, and to allow things to breathe, and allow things and characters to their vocal performances to kind of land more, and to be the more central focus. And not only that, but then allow the music to be even more impactful when it does return with a crescendo, or with a lower point, or to allow for emotion. So obviously there was only one late great Shirley Walker, and our dynamic music partners that have carried the torch since her passing, and alongside her, and worked alongside her, obviously have their own legacy to work on too. But I think in this case, it's just kind of more indicative of what the norm was for cartoons, where it's just like, well, kids are going to get bored, and it's going to be weird if we just have people talking. So we better have some music behind this, because it'll evoke more emotion and kind of establish what we're going for here. So if Mikey's talking, let's have some light music behind him that kind of punctuates his jokes. And if, we're having this fight, you better have some rock music. And, so wall-to-wall music is definitely one of the notes that I had, and would probably be a negative to this, because it does. I don't think anything necessarily distracts from the dialogue or the action, but it does just feel a little bit cluttered at times, where you just have, it's like, well, I don't think you really needed this. You could have just showed the action, and maybe had the dialogue happen, and just have them talking, as opposed to dialogue, sound effects, and the music behind it. So that was something, and I also noted the various different pieces that we had. We had like this funky drum and guitar bit at the beginning, in the Purple Dragon sequence, and then more, I would say, more Japanese influenced woodwind instruments as they're doing the Master Splinter's challenge thing, and then his meditation bit. Then we have some heavy synth music when we have our our mousers attacking. It's much more synthesizer heavy. Then when they're running across the rooftops, we have an almost like 80s inspired guitar adventure sound that comes through. It's just like an 80s, not quite a rock ballad, but just like an 80s, just like jamming guitar riff as they're running across across. And then we kind of go back to more funky turtle music theme that's kind of worked in. That's the other thing, is that you punctuate a lot of the sequences with that turtle theme. And I know it's we've talked about that before. I can't remember the last show that we talked about that did that kind of punctuated a lot of stuff. Was it Static that did that, or no? I don't remember what the last thing we watched that punctuated that. It's not coming to my mind, but there's something recently that we watched.
The Batman, I feel like.
Oh, yep.
There's that echoey The Edge style guitar riff kind of follows almost every scene of that show.
Yep, and sometimes punctuates the dialogue as Batman is speaking. Yeah, so around the same time. Imagine that. 2003, 2004 here. So yeah, it does kind of punctuate that. I don't hate it. I think maybe if we were reviewing this every single week, that might get old. But as far as a self-contained one little episode review here, it's fine. Yeah, so that's kind of my general thoughts as far as the music is concerned for this. And then I think the ramping up the intensity towards the end here is as Splinter, as Shredder kills the guy,
yes.
And the evil laugh that accompanies this like crescendo of strings and synth at the end there does a great job of punctuating that sequence as well. But yeah, I think our main event is probably our theme song, which, since you and I decided that we were going to cover this, I'm not going to lie, I think at least once a day I've sung this song. To the point where I've annoyed myself. I'm just counting off 1, 2, 3, 4 turtles. I'm like, stop it. Stop counting the turtles. All right.
There's a little bit of that, like once you start, you also you have to go through the whole song in your head
100%
before it exits. You can't just do one verse. And so if you get to turtles counted off, you have to go through all the codes of the martial arts, etc. And so it's like, yeah, it never ends. But yeah, I mean, I know people love the like I said, the 80s cartoon theme, also very iconic to people of a certain generation. But yeah, this is the Ninja Turtles theme for me. I remembered every word of it.
Yep.
I had not watched this series in well over 10 years, probably closer to 15 at least. And yeah, just every word of it burned into my brain just from how often we watched this in in original run and then the reruns. And I was thinking about that because eventually they changed the song because they do a season where they go to the future and stuff. So as the series goes on, so this original theme I think only lasts for the first four seasons or something. So, but I'm like, nope, it's just burned into me forever. There will be blood relatives' names I forget before I forget.
Before you
and all
forget
else fails, and it's time to kick butt.
I was going to say, before forgetting how to live by the code of martial arts, you will forget names and faces of many other people. Yeah. Right. I waffled back and forth here because, as we said, I don't love the handling of the music, but that theme song is just, it's incredible. It's an incredible piece of music. An incredible composition. It is an earworm that will not leave your brain. And boy, it's just so good. I ended up going, so I wish I don't know how I've handled this before. I wish we could do like a separate score for theme song versus the general episode music, because I think theme song gets a 10 and the general music would get probably a 5, or maybe a 6. And then so for this, I'm just gonna settle on a 9. I'm just gonna weigh it out, give a weighted score of 9 out of 10. The theme song is absolutely perfect, would get a 10 if it was just that score. I think the rest of the episode, though, and that's what we're judging the entire episode as a whole. The musical compositions are fine. It's just a little bit too much music for my taste. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't totally disagree. I think this is where the score is going to be higher because we're just parachuting in to review one episode, and
Right.
we'll likely never touch this show again, at least on this show. Unless there's a lot of demand. We'll see next year. Maybe there's an April Fools month sometime where we can.
That's right.
We can revisit some of the other stuff we've already looked at. But anyway, that's for the future, us to decide. But yeah, I think because it's just a one and done for me, I'm like, yeah, 10 out of 10 for this one. The theme is it's perfect, and they bring it in so many times throughout, like we said, to kind of punctuate scenes and punctuate the big action beats of the episode. Just every time it comes in,
it's in the bumpers. It's in the bumpers that you get for the commercials. It's in the credits. It's
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that alone I think gets it pretty high. And like I said, I did like some of the individual little riffs we got. Like I said, the Splinter music and the Mouser music, as well as whatever that. I can't tell if it's someone saying a word or just making a sound, but the shredder, like it's like "ho" at the end there, that's mixed in with the horn, mixed in with the strings, is very haunting and very like etched into my brain, as far as like every time the shredder shows up, you hear that sound. It's like the Jaws theme or something. Like we're like, yep, something a bad dude is here.
That's right.
So I love that as well. So again, I don't know if we were reviewing the whole series, I don't think it'd be getting 10s every week for music, but for a one and done, I think the theme song alone carries it over the threshold for me.
All right, Liam. Well, that will bring us to our final category of the day, which is going to be our voice actors and actresses. I don't know if we have any actresses in this one, but our voice actors for the episode. Let's go ahead and talk about our voice cast, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of minor roles to mention. We do briefly have Eric Stewart. He's the gang leader, the guy who's, as you mentioned, he's reciting a lot of dialogue directly from that original TMNT comic, and then he also has to deliver the maybe his best part is having to deliver the "I'm being killed off screen" shout at the very end there. But good job from him. And then we have playing he doesn't get named officially in this episode, but playing the Shredder, aka Oroku Saki, is Scotty Rayao or Rayo, although he went by Scotty Ray when this show was on the air. Oh yeah, man, that the villain laugh really got me. I was like, man, he just loves being evil. He's so happy when he gets to kill someone.
Pure evil. Yep. He starts out real calm, and then by the end of it, you can tell this guy is no good. So yeah, pretty. I mean, it's a small part that he has to play. Assuming that maybe he does the watch out for Shredder also during the credit sequence also, but that certainly has some sort of effect or modulation on his voice. But this is really good, especially in such a small, tiny little preview here of that character.
Absolutely there. And then we have Darren Dunstan playing Master Splinter, which I thought this was interesting because he actually worked on the crew of this show as well. He was worked in, I guess, in the audio department, and has a lot of like voice direction and ADR credits to his name. If you look him up on IMDb, almost as many as his voice acting roles. But here he is, ended up, I guess it's kind of like how Bruce Timm ended up playing the Joker's leader. Maybe he just, I don't know if they just weren't finding exactly what they wanted in the audition process for Splinter, but they settled on him. And like I said, he's got this real, he's always dishing out the lessons. He's not kind of a a complete character. He's not speaking in metaphor. He's not Mr. Miyagi either. Like he's got like this. He has this warmth to him. I think when he's sort of instructing them and teaching them lessons, where you can tell it's like they. I feel like that, and we talked about that being one of the themes that that the creators of the show wanted to really focus in on was the family dynamic here and how they do view Splinter as their dad, and I feel like that comes through even like I said, even when he's sort of disciplining them or trying to teach them lessons at the start of the episode. I think that like fatherly warmth really comes out in his performance, and then on top of it, he also has the bit where he can't figure out the phone, which is really funny.
Yeah, it does. He comes off as the wise sage, which is what his role is, and what he's supposed to be representing here. And he does get the little bit of comedic bit there, as you mentioned, but and a little bit even more so in the lair as he's telling them they have to clean up their rooms and all that stuff, and kind of drops the bomb that they don't just get to move in without straightening up. So not much for him to do other than to that initial sequence where he gets to kind of establish himself as their leader, and then that little quiet moment before the Mousers show up, and then the little comedy bits there afterwards. But yeah, it's a pretty strong performance from him, I'd say.
Absolutely. And then we do briefly hear from Mark Thompson as Officer Eastman, which is really only worth mentioning because he's also the voice of Casey Jones in this series. So,
okay, there you go.
Casey Jones not in the episode, but Mr. Thompson does get a line or two. And then, we have our four main heroes to talk about. We have Wayne Grayson as Michelangelo, who folks would probably know best from speaking of some of those English dubs that 4Kids, Fox Kids TV was known for in this era. Did a lot of voices on Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. He's our Michelangelo. We have Sam Riegel as Donatello. Folks might know him from Legend of Vox Machina, another anime, or the Critical Role, which I think is a YouTube like D&D show that's very popular.
Oh, okay.
He's our Donatello. We have Michael Sinterniklas. Apologies, there's no way that's Sinterniklas, perhaps, playing Leonardo. Folks might know him from the Bleach anime series, as well as a lot of other voice acting, and then also Gregory Abbey as Raphael here, who's also done quite a bit of he's interesting because he's not only has he done like there's a lot of like additional voices. He's like a Hall of Fame, like one episode of every like network television procedural that's been on the air for the last 10 years, probably 20 years. There's a Law and Order here, an FBI here, Good Wife here, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel here, like just a habitual one episode guest star character actor type here. So I think it's interesting because yes, we know that there are these four turtles that grew up in New York. Raph's the only one who has like a New York accent though. Raphael is like very Italian. And then the other guys like Leo and Donnie, I think has kind of this, because he's the nerd, he's the tech guy, he has this sort of like, he speaks a little higher. He's like, he seems a little more, and a lot of his dialogue is, it's the say it in English genius type of thing. Like he's always using, big words and sort of fascinated by the tech on the lock and everything like that. And then I think Leo is played pretty straight as just the sort of self-serious leader. And then Michelangelo sounds like he's from California for some reason. Like,
he's
which I do think
yeah.
I was gonna say, because I feel like the other versions, they all sound like they're from California, like they're all dudes, like the 80s show or some of this thing. So I feel like it works better to have each of them when we talk about how we're not just doing, boilerplate, simple, not quite so simplistic character beats for all these guys. So they all have a unique way of speaking. Mikey's like a Shaka Bra. And
right.
And Raph's like Hell's Kitchen, New York, and then we have the other two who speak maybe more just like traditional, like middle America, normal, what would be quote unquote normal American, I guess, for their parts, and it's more about their saying than elect, I guess. But yeah, they managed in this first one to really, again, just as about they do a good job of sort of establishing all of their beats. Leo's Donatello loves he's the big nerd, and then we have silly Michelangelo and the hothead Raphael, but it's not a complete caricature like we kind of already talked about in plot.
Yeah, they are definitely like establishing them to be different. I think if they were all that traditional California, whoa, bro, like accent, Southern California sound alike, it would be difficult to differentiate other than what you're visually seeing on screen. So the fact that each of them kind of lends not only to their personalities, Mikey being the comic relief, and he's just kind of like a surfer dude and laid back and takes nothing serious. Raph, he's the angry guy. He's always he's got that Italian Brooklyn, New York accent.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, Donatello with like the kind of like the softer, nerdier voice, like
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Leo, who's just the leader of the team, essentially. He's just kind of like a balance between all of them, I feel like. So yeah, I think I'd be more interested in hearing some of the some of the performances. I think are from my recollection of this show, there's some specific episodes that are focused directly on each turtle that they get to show more emotion and stuff like that. I think for this episode, you're establishing your characters. You're kind of almost leaning more into those individual voice performances and to help establish the characters, as we've already talked about. So I think everybody's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the dialogue lets them down, I feel like, a little bit at times. It's a little bit campy, it's a little bit quippy, but again, you're establishing who the characters are and you're kind of going out of your way really to lean into that for the episode. So I think everybody does a fine job. I don't think anybody blew me away as far as like, oh, that's an incredible performance. I think everybody's serviceable, fine. And like I said, from my recollection, there's probably episodes down the line where, individuals get a little bit more to do and establish as far as their character is concerned through their voice acting. So I went with a 6 out of 10 for my score. I think everybody's good. I just don't think there was anything. Nobody was really asked to do a lot of great stuff for the episode or emote a ton, other than maybe our leader of our purple dragon gang, who had to scream like he was dying at the end.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think, like I said, it's definitely, there's not a lot of time for any of the individual turtles to really get a ton of time to shine because we're, like I said, we're packing so much into this first episode. But I think they do a good, solid job with what's asked of them for this first one, and you at least get a sense of who they are. So I ended up settling on a 7 out of 10 for my voice acting.
There we go. All right, Liam. Well, that will bring us to our final scores. Believe it or not, we've already wrapped up here for our final scores of the day. And tallying everything up on my end, I end up with a pretty strong 29 out of 40. What about you?
And yeah, I have a final score just a bit higher. I have 32 out of 40.
All right. We always talk about it every year.
Yeah, I was gonna say we don't do traditional rewatchability checks for the April Fools review, but obviously, if you were gonna check this show out or go back into the show, the pilot's generally a pretty good place to start. Like we said, it establishes all your players, not just the Turtles and Splinter themselves, but also, the bad guys of the series, the robots, the dragons, and Shredder himself. So yeah, obviously this is where you would start if you're new to this series or if you haven't watched it in a long time like us. Yeah, this would be the place to start.
Start at the beginning. Good advice. All right, Liam. Well, that will begin to wrap us up for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As we said at the top of the show, we love doing these April Fool's episodes. Get your votes in now. Slide into our DMs on Twitter X or Instagram and let us know what you'd like to see maybe for a future April Fools month or April Fools Day episode. We'll workshop that for 2026. But in the meantime, we hope that you enjoyed this one-off stay here in New York with our turtles here. It was fun looking back on this series that was kind of filled in a gap when we needed some Saturday morning cartoons and there was no Batman on our Saturday mornings anymore. So this was near and dear to our hearts during that time. Before we got to the Batman on Saturday mornings. So love this show, has near and dear. It was nice revisiting this series for even if it was only for 1 week. But perhaps if you would like to share with us your thoughts on this show, as well as maybe the prior Turtle cartoons, maybe you like the newer Turtle cartoons, maybe you're just a Turtle Comics fan, let us know. Tweet at us at DCAU Review. While you're there, give us a follow. Follow us on Instagram at DCAU Review. Slide into those DMs. Let us know your thoughts on this show as well. And then, of course, we do have pages established on Facebook and Blue Sky and Threads. You can interact with us there. Wait time might be a little bit longer than the more traditional methods, but we will eventually get back to you. So if those are your preferred methods of social media, then feel free to engage with us there as well. While you're at it, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app if you have not done so already, whether that's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, our big two there. Both of those platforms allow you to leave reviews. So if you don't mind, take a second, leave us a 5-star review in the app. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a little blurb about what you like about the podcast. And if we read your review here on the air, we will send you a little thank you gift if you live in the United States just for doing so. So head on over there to, if you listen on Apple Podcasts, and leave a review today. And that will bring us to the end of this week's episode, Liam, which brings us to look forward to next week, which will be a monumental 350th episode of the DCAU Review. And we've kind of established here that we like to do something a little bit special when we get to these big round numbers. And 350 is big enough, Liam, where we are returning to the DCAU character spotlight format for next week. And it is a big one, and we will not be alone when we return.
Absolutely. Can't wait to get there again for these round number episodes. We've been going back to our popular character spotlight episodes, where rather than picking a single episode to review and talk about, we pick a character from the DCAU pantheon and look at all of their appearances, as well as tie-in comics and action figures and some of the other merch that may have spawned from those characters. And we knew we needed a big one for 350, and as you mentioned, a helping hand along the way. So next week for episode 350, we will be doing a character spotlight for the one and only Ra's al Ghul. And we're not alone, as joining us will be the director of all of Ra's appearances in the original Batman the Animated Series run, Mr. Kevin Altieri, coming back on the show next week to join us for episode 350 and talk about just what makes Ra's so unique among the slew of incredible Batman villains. Why does Ra's sort of stand alone in some ways? So excited to talk with Kevin again and to look at some of the extracurriculars, as we always do when it comes to these character spotlight episodes next week with Ra's al Ghul.
That's right. It's going to be a blast, Liam. I cannot wait. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
We'll talk to you on the next episode, on the 350th edition of the DCAU Review.
Cowabunga.